Hello from the Clio Cloud Conference online. I'm Laurence Colletti.
I'm Tom West.
And we're on the road with Legal Talk Network. And we're back. Thank you so much for joining us on the road. It's a pleasure to be here. And today we welcome Tom West. He's the CEO of LawPay. And we're going to be talking about electronic payments. But before we get to that, we need to introduce our guest. Hello and welcome to the show, Tom.
Hey, Laurence. How you doing? Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, wonderful to be here. It's been real interesting to watch the Clio Cloud Conference unfold, and they've had a lot of wonderful events. And one of the staples to that conference, one of my favorite topics that we do year after year is the Clio Legal Trends Report. I think every lawyer should be reading that report. There's a lot of great information, and it changes from year to year, but really great insights as to the business trends and the practice trends within the industry. But your industry, Tom, LawPay, electronic payments was featured in there as kind of a three-tiered approach for some of these law firms that have fared better than others during the pandemic, of course, 2020. And so online payments was one of those tiers. Client portals was another. And the last one they featured pretty prominently this year was the client intake CRM. And of course, CRM, for lawyers out there not familiar, customer relationship management. So to the degree that law firms had client or cloud-based technologies that handled one of those three branches, they tended to do better. So, Tom, why don't we break it off just a little bit here? In terms of 2020 payment systems, I know you all have some information and some statistics on there, but can you give our listeners a rundown of how law firms that were integrated in electronic payments fared against law firms that didn't during the pandemic?
It's really been an amazing transformation that we've seen over the last 6 months in terms of the use of electronic payments. I mean, it has really skyrocketed as most firms have had to figure out how to deal with the virtualization of the world. It's particularly their offices and their practices, and so it's been really a mission critical business tool to continue to get paid in this environment. And I think that's, you mentioned it right in the upfront, but one of the most powerful things that Clio did this year was able to compare firms' performance that were on electronic payments going into the pandemic versus those that weren't. And it's absolutely dramatic how much better the firms that had electronic payments as part of their arsenal fared. It was an average of $15,000 more per lawyer, and that's accelerating. And not only is it more revenue per lawyer, but it also a lot more acceleration in new matters per lawyer, because I think it's just easier to get your clients signed up if you have a way of getting paid upfront electronically, whether it's a retainer payment or whether or not it's just a consultation.
We had a follow-up question to that, based on causation. You answered part of it. Why would you be getting new matters? How does an electronic payment system help you get new cases in the door? But, Tom, if you could help us out, how does an electronic payment system help with the bottom line? How does it bring in more revenue when you're basically doing the same service for the client?
Yeah, I think it is more about giving you access to clients that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have had access to. Most Americans don't have cash on hand, and particularly when you're talking about a surprise legal issue that comes up that they haven't been planning for, and so a lot of attorneys won't take work unless you can pay the $5,000 retainer up front, and it's really hard to do that if you don't have $5,000. But most Americans could put $5,000 on their credit card to get started. And so I think it does unlock kind of that next layer of opportunity for the lawyer and allow people to move much more quickly. The other thing that we've seen is that a lot of Americans, even if they do have the cash, are trying to hold on to it during this COVID period. And so there has been a rise in credit card usage. And so lawyers that are accepting credit cards are the ones that these clients are disproportionately looking to hire.
Oh, that's fascinating. So, Tom, one of the things we've been learning about in the last couple of years has been kind of just reinforced is the psychology of payments. And I just had a recent example in my personal life, not legal related, but it was just maybe about a month ago. I was kind of the end of a long week, and I didn't want to go out. I was kind of tired, and there really wasn't much to go out to. So that also kind of led to my decision. But I decided to play my Xbox, and I was going to buy a game online that I'd been reading about, and I sat down to download the game onto my console, and I guess at some point my Xbox must have updated, and I was required to re-enter my credit card data. And I remember I was all about the game, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting there about 50-50. It's like, I don't know if I want to get off the couch. I don't know if I want to get my credit card. I don't know if I want to enter this information. Maybe I'll just go to bed, And so eventually I broke down and got it. But it was amazing how I went from, I'm going to do this right now to 50-50 prospect, all because of the psychological change there, getting off the couch when I'm tired. And so obviously kind of a non-legal related example, but as I understand it, there is some psychology that goes into when bills are paid, and there's some ideal times for lawyers to give their clients invoices. So maybe you could kind of fill in the gaps there for our listeners here.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's definitely a method to the madness and some strategies that actually work better than others. I mean, if you think about just the American lifestyle today, the consumer and even B2B customers are used to frictionless payments. Everywhere they go, payments are frictionless. If you hop in an Uber, you don't have to do anything. Automatically, the payment is happening, and that's our belief, is the more that we can provide payment choice, help the lawyer provide payment choice, reduce the friction in getting paid, the more likely that the customer is going to pay that bill. And part of the evidence of that is we've found that nearly 60% of our payment links are paid by the next day. It's amazing that, within a 24-hour period, they're getting paid when most lawyers are used to waiting 60, 80, 90, 120 days and chasing bills. This is a way to get those, to reduce that friction and get paid much more immediately. And then in terms of timing, absolutely, we see spikes happening in our payments during pay periods. And I think that's where you really want to if you have an ability to get your bills out on the 15th, get your bills out at the end of the month, when people are getting paid, you're much more likely to get paid because they're feeling like they have the funds to be able to cover it. And so we definitely see spikes in our system happening, during those periods.
Oh, that's really smart. I hadn't thought about that, but I think that's true. People, they feel better about paying bills when there's more money in the account. So last follow-up question on this. I've been, I'm a lawyer, and I've been on both sides of the coin. I've been, representing clients, but I've also been on the consumer side of legal services. And, in my course of my representation, I've hired law firms on behalf of others. And one of the things that I would find that would frustrate my clients, but also clients of another law firm, was that they would get a bill not frequently. They'd get it maybe every quarter, and that bill would be huge. So instead of seeing it along the way, they would get this bill, every quarter, and then of course, the law firm wants that paid because it's starting to add up. But just the psychological portion of that was pretty daunting. You see this large bill, and there's a surprise to it. But one of the things that I kind of noticed is that it seemed to take longer to pay a bill back like that. Sometimes a delay, but also the psychological factor, like how are we going to pay for this? So any thoughts on that, in terms of, not letting those bills pile up?
Yeah, no, I think you are on to something big, which is that, if you look at across really any industry, you're paying for things as you're receiving them, or maybe in front of when you receive them. Legal is still one of the very few industries out there that's willing to provide a service and then hoping you pay for it after the service has been provided. And to me, that makes no sense. I think we ought to find ways as a legal community to be able to keep that billing process happening throughout the matter. And I think the function of that will be that there will be more bills, more frequent bills at lesser amounts. And I do agree with you entirely that the psychology there is smaller bites versus necessarily one big chunk at the end where it's going to take a while. The bill has to be evaluated. We still have one of the things that's most fun for us to see happen is when a law firm first gets on LawPay because, maybe they've been in this traditional model where they've been doing the work and then 30, 60 days after they're sending out a large bill and then they spend a long time chasing those bills. And the moment that they start to put their invoices out on LawPay and they receive those payments back literally within 24-hour period, there's just a moment of euphoria that they say, well, why haven't I been doing this all along? Because I do think that the most valuable thing in all of this is the lawyer's time. And the lawyer spending time chasing bills really isn't value added for anybody in the process. And I think that's one of the things that they find most powerful is that they get to shift a lot of that time away from chasing and a lot more time actually being lawyers and impacting their clients, which is the reason they went to law school.
My landlord and I, we do payments through a service called Zelle, which builds onto my banking app, and so really nice to kind of submit the rent that way. I got a nice record, and it shows up really neat in my accounting system that I have with my bank. But I know you all provide these services, Tom, over at LawPay. But just in terms of trends, with this new generation, Gen Z, the millennials, even some of the tail end of Generation X. What are you seeing in terms of the services that they're preferring to pay with? What is there any breakout model, or is it just kind of scattered against a bunch of different brands kind of servicing the same space?
I do think we're going to see lots of changes in payment methods as we move forward. We'll see increases in Venmo and Apple Pay and the wallets coming through the system. It really hasn't come to the legal market yet, but I do think that's the next generation of customer. What we are seeing a ton of, what probably the fastest growing type of payment today is the scheduled payment. And that is where the lawyer or the client is setting a fixed schedule and the payments are happening on an automatic basis. And, that's good for the lawyer, obviously, because you've got a very predictable cash flow, but it's also good for the client because the client doesn't have to deal with making a payment. It just happens automatically. A lot like you were talking about with Zelle, you kind of fix it and forget it, and then you have electronic record of it happening. Our system notifies the customer. You can notify them a day, 3 days, or 7 days in advance, whatever you prefer for your practice, and then the payment occurs automatically. And it's just it's like clockwork. And we see that is literally the fastest growing payment type in our system.
All right, just one last question for you, Tom. If our listeners, they want to follow up with you or the nice folks over at LawPay, where's the best place to go?
Well, come over and see us at lawpay.com. Of course, we love our partnership with Clio and Clio Payments, which is powered by LawPay. I think Clio is very forward-thinking and having a best-in-class solution, and so the folks at Clio Payments can also help you out. But happy to answer any questions that people have. We have folks standing by. We have over 35 certified payment professionals, which is actually a designation you can get in our industry that are standing by here to help our lawyers be successful no matter what their experience is with electronic payments in the past, we're happy to help them figure it out and make the most in their particular practice.
All right, well, we've reached the end of the road for today's episode, but I want to thank Tom West, our guest, for joining us. Thank you, Tom.
Laurence, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please rate and leave us a review in your favorite podcasting app. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.